You're a full-time YouTuber. Many of us would like to do better on YouTube in the gaming space. Any tips?
Yeah, so it's a hard slog being a professional full-time YouTuber. Make no mistake, it takes a lot of work and dedication and giving up a lot of your free time and the other things that people will take for granted, like gaming, for instance. I don't do any sort of video gaming or very little video gaming, and if I do, it's usually a reward for doing, 5,000 words of writing during the day. I started out with shout out to the people who my origin story. Shout out to DM Scotty and DMG, Dungeon Master Johnny, Ander Woodward, Barker, Matt Click, and the various other people from the YouTube or the Facebook RPG Brigade, but YouTube RPG Brigade. Back then, it was kind of verboten to monetize your videos in any way, put advertising on your D&D videos. But there was a drive for people to get out of the RPG net forums and things like that and actually get online and start playing games and showing people how games are actually played instead of just talking about how to play the game, actually broadcast games. And I think Ander Woodward was the who is the author of Within the Ring of Fire RPG, which you should definitely check out. He was the pioneer. He was one of the first people, if not the first person, to broadcast a game over Google Hangouts. So it's relatively recent history. This is like 20 years ago. And I was part of that first wave of people who were trying to organize people to play online. And not only that, but play everything but Dungeons and Dragons and get lots of indie games played and get exposure so that people could understand that it's a broad hobby base of lots of different games that people play. And we set up the one-shot group on Facebook, and that was going fairly well until internal politics and stuff, as you do on Facebook, sort of made everything fall apart. And I got sort of socially cancelled at the same time, which is highly traumatic, but actually made me concentrate and double down on making videos about RPG stuff. And so I could kind of say thank you to everybody that was involved in that, even though it was very traumatic at the time, and I still have like PTSD flashbacks from it. It gave me better insight into what it's like on the receiving end of being socially cancelled, and a lot more empathy for people with anxiety and things like that, and also made me concentrate on what I was doing and my path ahead, and not pay so much attention to the people who basically turned around and knifed me in the back at the first opportunity they had that I was paying attention to and not monetizing my videos and things like that. So after that, it was just full steam ahead. Let's turn this into a career. Let's see what happens. And now here I am. I was working, that was when I was working in various different jobs. I think the main kick there was when I was working at a casino. So I was working all evening, and during the daytime I was recording videos. And quite often, and also after that, I started working at a genetics lab. And you'll see in my early videos when I'm on camera how haggard and tired I look, because I was working a full-time job, and all of my spare time was taking up making YouTube videos of relatively poor quality, but consistently. And I put in that effort because I loved it. I was very passionate about it. So my main tips, first off, would be pick a topic that you're passionate about. If you're just getting into the gaming space because you think that's a market that's ripe for exploitation, yeah, but you're going to burn out if you're not really, really passionate and dedicated to it. So follow your passions and make a video about it. There will be an audience out there for you, because the audience of YouTube is absolutely vast. So it doesn't have to be gaming related stuff, or it can be very niche. Like you could be custom making your own dice and just filming that, and you could get an audience and get monetized just doing that. Just be consistent and allow your passion to show through, but don't put on a fake persona. Don't play yourself up as being happy when you're not. Just be genuine, and that really comes through. Disingenuous personalities tend to burn out on the internet as well. So what you get with me on my videos is pretty much what I'm like in day-to-day life. I probably swear more, but I just got into the habit of not swearing very much, and it just helped out my YouTube metrics by putting more advertising on my channel. And that's really been the key. So what I decided to do was I started off doing crafting videos, which is why I mentioned DM Scotty and DMJ. And from there, I was filming that, and I was talking about what I was doing. And then when I started crafting monsters and talking about the monster, I just included monster lore. I think the first thing I started off with was the roper. And I got a lot of really positive feedback about how I was presenting the lore of these creatures. And nobody was really expanding on the lore of monsters at the time, apart from Dungeon Master Johnny had a monster feature on his channel, and there was Arthur Kadawa as well, who has the World of Monsters channel, who's still going strong. He definitely needs more attention. And yeah, various other contemporaries at the time who are no longer making videos, unfortunately. A lot of them no longer making videos. And then from there, I just started concentrating more on lore and away from the terrain crafting and miniature crafting and sculpting and stuff. So away from my artistic pursuits and more into research and study. And yeah, I started to really look into Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought this is a great opportunity to learn the game, not only the rules and stuff, but the lore of Dungeons and Dragons, and be the dungeon master that I've always wanted to be, sort of thing. And so why not bring everybody else along for the ride? How hard is it to learn everything there is to know about Forgotten Realms? Turns out you can make videos about Forgotten Realms lore forever. There's just an endless supply of like 50 years of literary history to draw from. So big shout out to Ed Greenwood, George Crashos, and Eric Boyd, Bruce Cordell, Monty Cook, Mike Merles, Chris Perkins, all the guys who contributed a lot to D&D lore over the years. I've missed out so many, but there's so many of them. Jeff Grubb, oh yeah, so many. Slade, and yeah. So the concentration on lore, and then the suggestion I had from Dungeon Master DMG Gareth over in Australia. He said, write script out your videos. Actually, write the scripts down. It will help with your delivery, with your editing, and all that sort of stuff. And it will give you a resource that you can draw on later. And I was like, okay, gave it a go. It was magic. Got rid of all the ums and ahs. And even now you can hear it's sort of trained the ums and ahs out of my speech in day-to-day life. So he said, so making the YouTube videos has improved the cadence of my writing, and yeah, writing every single day has slowly built up these muscles to actually write now. And so I'm planning on moving away and actually like writing some books and things like that. That's the plan ahead, but I'm sort of skipping ahead there. So yeah, and the lore videos is what you call evergreen content, which means that it's because I don't do promotions and things like that on my channel. Generally speaking, I just do the Google ad slots. I don't promote Raid Shadow Legends and various other gaming companies or anything like that, even though they do offer me pretty good lucrative contracts and things like that. I just believe that takes away from the power of YouTube to actually monitor and modify and rule its own self, because it's advertisers get to dictate terms to YouTube, and we saw how bad that was during the adpocalypse. And even now, like last Christmas, we didn't have a lot of revenue from YouTube for some reason. I don't know whether it was COVID or economic downturn or something, but it seemed like our Christmas boom time, where advertising was supposed to be at a premium, the premium never arrived, or it never arrived in our pockets, that's for sure. Anyway, so it's been a pretty tough year from the beginning. So I was working at the lab, and it turns I started to actually earn money off my YouTube videos with the improved performance and just the consistency. And the metric that I was watching is that people kept coming back, and once they saw one of my videos, they would watch the rest, the archive of videos that I had there. And so the more videos I made, the more people would go back and watch the other videos that I made, and they would bring in revenue, and the new video would bring in revenue. So it just built up and up and up. And so I was really motivated to cover as many different lore videos and really double down and concentrate on the content that people liked. And they were asking for more Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons lore became my focus. And pretty soon I had covered the entire monster manual for 5th edition from A to Z. I actually started off doing this right at the start of D&D Next, I think, was around. I was starting to get actually really seriously into it. And by the time D&D 5th edition came around, I think it was 5 years ago, I went full-time and quit my actual lab job. But I was already like pretty deep into 5th edition by that stage, and had a pretty good reputation for. And I was pretty confident that I the money was coming in steadily and consistently around the same amount of money that I was earning in the lab. And I thought, okay, the lab work, because of physical problems and things like that, and mental health problems, was just really, really torturous for me. And I was facing all sorts of problems at the lab anyway for not showing up on work and running out of sick days and things like that, and having no explanation for it because I had undiagnosed conditions and things. And it was just a good time to take that leap. And it really was like leaping off a cliff and hoping that you can fly. And lo and behold, as soon as I did that, pretty much immediately I got demonetized by by YouTube for no reason that they've ever been able to explain to me. So I've never actually trusted YouTube as far as I could spit them, and I still don't. And I get insulted every time they call me a partner. I'm not a partner. We're contractors. And they will throw us in front of the bus the first opportunity they have because they're a corporation just like anything else. So I have no illusions that YouTube has got my back, and it's always a very good idea to back up your main income source with a secondary income source and a tertiary income source, and make very sure that the tax man doesn't know about everything that you do. Anyway, so I've been going strong for 5 years, and I haven't looked back really. It was a torturous process getting my video channel remonetized, and I've never branched out into a secondary channel for anything else. It's always been my main channel is me, the mighty glue stick AJ Pickett, and what I do on my channel is what I want. On average, my channel is mostly supported. It's about half and half YouTube and half Patreon. So Patreon, I started out right at the beginning of Patreon, and the levels that I've set for Patreon has always been $1 gets you access to everything. So $1 a month minimum donation, which means that you set your donations per video that I upload at $1, and then you set your maximum donation that month at $1. So if I have 300 patrons, I get $300. But it turns out a lot of them just voluntarily put it at $1 per video, fairly reasonable, and then they set it at like $10 or something like that. Patreon used to have a lot better reporting in regards to that, so I knew how many people were extending that thing, but now the reporting is less accurate. And also, I understand that people need to downsize and things like that occasionally, and if they've got the donation set at $15 or $20, they're much more likely to drop an extraneous spend on supporting fan supporting content would be the first thing off their list. What should really be is subscriptions for sites that you no longer use. You should go out and check your bank account today for those sort of expenditures. They're the ones that drain your resources. But I've had some very, very good and loyal and generous patrons over the years, and they really saved my bacon when I got demonetized. I was out of work, and I was reliant on Patreon to basically pay my bills. Otherwise, I would have been homeless, pretty much. And so they saved my ass. Unfortunately, because I do mostly Dungeons and Dragons content, or had done, I was limited by the fan content policy, not the OGL. The fan content policy is actually much more restrictive in that the crux of it in a nutshell is that you can't put anything behind a paywall. It all has to be released for free. You can make money off it, but you can never put it behind a paywall like Patreon or something like that, where people will not have access to it eventually. You can have exclusive access to content for a little while, but then you have to release it to the public sphere. Otherwise, Wizards of the Coast would basically shut you down. And believe me, they would. I've never really run into a problem with Wizards of the Coast, but I've never had any support or communication with them whatsoever, aside from when I was working for a gaming company, but that's another story. So in the end, currently, modern day, I'm transitioning away from Dungeons & Dragons content and doing more creative writing. I'm writing a book called AJ's Guide to Extraterrestrials, which is an homage to Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and pouring a lot of my creative juices into that, and everything that I learned at university, and all the lore videos that I've made over the years for Dungeons & Dragons monsters and mythology is all being turned into a sci-fi extravaganza, which should hopefully blow people's minds when I finally get it kickstarted and printed. Other than that, I'm designing a couple of RPGs. One's a completely open source supers game, kind of my nod to Heroes Unlimited, my favorite RPG ever. And it's open source in that it's going to be presented not in print, but as a YouTube video. with timestamps as the index, so that anybody with access to the YouTube gets a full and complete role-playing game that would otherwise be kickstarted and published as a physical print book and PDF. I've decided to go away from that and just release it completely for free, open source that anybody can use. And anyone can also make any sort of derivative content or products that they want to support the free core game. But the free core game will always be just that. No revenue, no kickbacks, nothing. Just free for everyone. Kind of as a big middle finger to corporate interests who would seek to own everything in our hobby. To say we don't need to actually pay anything. We don't need to act that way ourselves. We can make money just in the secondary market, making support products for core games that we release ourselves for free. And here is my example of how to do it. At the same time, I'm also got a license agreement with Trollhalla Press, Kevin Kenson Andre and Stephen Crompton for using the Monsters rule set, which is a successor to Tunnels and Trolls, the first ever indie RPG game that's not Dungeons and Dragons. And that's a basic, very simple D6 based rule set, and it lends itself really well to all sorts of different settings and things like that. And I've got a doozy of a setting that I've been working on for years that I've called Godforge. And it's like imagine it's a high fantasy, high future techno-magical extravaganza, that the main thing is that I'm not calling it a role-playing game, I'm calling it a system because it incorporates both role-playing, skirmish play like Mort Borg and that sort of stuff, and also solo play in the way that you build the world and build adventures and dungeons and things using Ex Nova and Ex Umbra as a basis for how that's made. And the D6 system for Super Atomic is based on West End Games' original D6, or actually their advanced second edition D6, which would have been published for Star Wars, but unfortunately the company went out of business through no fault of their own. And they released that rule set to the public domain before they did so. So we don't have to worry about the OGL and Creative Commons sort of stuff. It's just free to use and adapt anyway. So the core game system will be that, plus just some extra little tweaks for the supers aspect of it. And that's my plan ahead, and that's how I kind of support myself as a full-time YouTuber. A lot of it is working with other channels and promoting other channels. A lot of it also is just making sure that you stay consistent and keep your audience informed with what you're doing and what you're planning. If you do make any changes to your channel, just go into it so that everybody knows exactly what you're doing. And you will lose viewers, but if you do it right, you'll gain viewers at about the same rate, which is what I'm at the moment. So my channel growth seems to have stagnated, but in actual fact, it's just a lot of people who are very dedicated to monster lore are leaving, and a lot of people who are interested in extraterrestrials and my own creative writing are coming in. So I see the transition as going smoothly as far as I'm concerned. And of course, the potential market for science fiction that's outside of role-playing games is massive compared to the audience for role-playing game material. So I think it's a good time to use the creative writing skills that I've built up over the years and to put them to actual work as an author, not just like a reporter and a researcher and a sage.